Canada is moving to decarbonize the economy, and energy companies need to respond. We need to ensure our companies exist in an environment where they're able to build and meet the increased load caused by electrification. As well, the Canadian customer is changing and expects more choice and flexibility beyond the meter. So I'm very pleased to introduce Keith Cronkhite, the President and CEO of New Brunswick Power, who will be interviewed by Channa Perera, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs here at CEA, to discuss the Canadian regulatory landscape in 2021.
Joining me to talk about the state of the electricity industry and how it is regulated is Keith Cronkhite, President and CEO of NB Power. Thanks for joining, Keith.
Good morning, Channa. Pleased to be here with you today.
Great. Let's start with the state of the industry. We have seen unprecedented transformation of the electricity industry over the last decade, from growing in renewables to advancements in communication technologies. Change has been relentless. Keith, can you provide a sense of what other game changes we can anticipate in the decade ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Channa. I agree. I believe the industry has seen, the amount of change in the last 10 years. We haven't seen that degree of change probably in the previous 30 or 40 years, quite frankly. So it is significant. When we think about renewable energy and the surge we've seen in the uptake of that over the last number of years, I think over the next coming years, it'll be important that we figure out a way that we can integrate those renewables more seamlessly into the grid. The intermittency that occurs with wind and solar today is becoming more and more significant, and our ability to ensure that we do that seamlessly is going to be key to being able to integrate more renewables going forward. So there's no question that is going to be an absolute requirement. When we think about conservation and clean electricity, and how do we partner with our customers moving forward in distributed generation is going to be another key game changer, I would say, in that the customer normally in the past has been a recipient of electricity and they use it as they see fit. We're now seeing that changing in that customers will become more center in the conversation, whether it's through conservation methods that they may adopt, but equally as important as a distributed generator with solar panels or wind turbines within their local area. They are going to be a key part of that conversation moving forward. And behind the meter, the Internet of Things that is going on that will enable them to make choices about how they use electricity and who they partner with will be absolutely key. So, customers certainly are wanting to be part of that dialogue and are going to be centric to the conversation moving forward. Absolutely. And we welcome that.
Now, certainly a lot of changes in the air, Keith. So the industry continues to be regulated by provincial energy boards. Do you think the current economic regulatory frameworks are structured in a way that to support this long-term transformation? And in your perspective, what are some of the regulatory pain points?
I think the short answer is no. And I think our experience through CanPut and dialogue with regulators right across the country is that they would openly admit, I think they're struggling with how do we transform or how do we oversee the transformation that's going on in the industry that allows utilities and instills confidence in the regulatory process or review and the decision making for customers that they are the right decisions. And I think they struggle with that. And I think for us, it's not about building a simple transmission line. While building a transmission line isn't always simple, or a generating plant, those have been the decisions of the past that the regulatory process has, for the most part, overseen. The transformation that's going on, the digital transformation that's going on, is very difficult to say why. Why do you decide now that you need to make that change and that significant investment in order to prepare yourself for something that's coming 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road? And I think, regulators struggle with that. I would say that the common denominator today is a conversation around how does it impact reliability or improve reliability? What is the business case or the business driver for some of those investments. And it's really, breaking down that delivery chain within the utility system to say, this is the right investment for today, and this is why. And in some cases, it won't revert back to a business case at the end of the day. It'll be around reliability, or it'll be around an enabler for something else to occur that involves the customer that we talked about earlier. So I think that is a struggle for the regulatory conversation today. And I think the other part is, should the utility make those investments, or should the private sector make some of those investments? Which is, again, another area that in conversations with regulators today, they struggle with. And so I think creating a dialogue and exploring these things, I'll say more deliberately moving forward, is going to be key to solving how we move forward in that regulatory landscape.
Mm-hmm. Now, Keith, what changes do you think then must be introduced to ensure the regulatory systems respond to the changing needs of the industry?
I would say that a common denominator is that we need to modernize the regulatory system. And that's not only in our jurisdictions, that's really right across the country. Regulatory systems tend to be driven by legislation. Legislation tends to be prescriptive. And as we move into this environment, when there's less certainty or less known about what our future holds, a prescriptive legislation typically will not work. So trying to future-proof some of that legislation that regulators rely on and creating a bit more flexibility in that will be important. I also think that, from local government's perspective or provincial government's perspective, policy direction that provides utilities room to maneuver is going to be important, that is coupled with that. So not getting overly prescriptive in the legislation framework, I think, is a start, and providing a throttling, if you will, or tweaking from time to time through policy direction that is coupled with that, I think we'll get a better solution at the end of the day. I find today we're quite rigid in our process, and as a result of that, the ability to make change is hindered. The time it takes to make change is impacted. And as a result, we're not meeting the needs of customers, and they'll go about and make their own decisions outside of that framework that has an impact on the overall system, and it has an impact on the utilities today. So going back again to that conversation with the customer is going to be key.
Great. Thank you so much, Keith. That's all the time we have.
Thank you, Channa. Appreciate the opportunity. Have a safe day.
Thank you.
"2020 was a year of social upheaval. Many Canadians shifted to a working from home environment, millions while balancing difficult family responsibilities. Others, our essential workers, continued to go into work every day and faced an onslaught of new health and safety precautions and concerns. A year in, and we're only beginning to understand the long-lasting impact this pandemic will have on our healthcare system and on all Canadians. Our final discussion of the day will be between our Director of Government Affairs, Leah Michalopoulos, Director of Customer Counsel, Diana Dominique, and the President and CEO of Electricity HR Canada, Michelle Brannigan. Together, they will evaluate the impact of 2020 on our electricity customer and on our workforce.